It was 6:42 a.m. when I spotted her Prius parked half a mile up the dirt road, hazards blinking like it had broken down. It hadn't. She was crouched behind a cactus with binoculars, wearing full camo, at least, what she thought was camo. I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the HOA president of Bloomfield Estates try to blend in with the desert like a suburban Navy SEAL. That's when I knew the war had begun. 3 days earlier, it all started with a knock on my gate, not the door. A laminated notice zip-tied to the wooden post, corners flapping in the breeze. In bold red letters, "Violation, unapproved structure, immediate compliance required." Below that was a grainy black and white photo of my windmill, like it was caught in some criminal act. I stood there, barefoot in the dirt, sipping lukewarm coffee and trying to remember when I gave a damn about suburban opinions. Spoiler, I didn't. I lived 2 miles from the HOA's outermost fence line. My great-grandfather built this ranch before that whole subdivision existed. But apparently that didn't stop Karen Littleton from thinking she had jurisdiction over the sun and the wind now, too. Karen Littleton, president of the Bloomfield Estates Homeowners Association, was the kind of woman who laminated her grocery lists and called the police when someone painted their door sunset coral instead of desert beige. She wore pearls with workout gear and owned 3 separate leashes for her cat. I only knew that last part because she included it in a speech during a mandatory neighborhood safety meeting, which I'd only seen clips of on Facebook, one of her favorites, apparently. Her name was always trending on the local subreddit, #CrazyKarenWithTheClipboard. Now, I don't live in Bloomfield. I never applied, never agreed, and I sure as hell never paid dues. But that didn't stop her. She'd recently passed some new boundary beautification initiative in her HOA charter, expanding their visual regulation perimeter. Fancy talk for, "I saw your ranch from my drone and now I hate it." I didn't respond to the notice. Didn't even take it down. Just duct taped a note underneath. "File under G, for garbage." That was Tuesday. By Thursday, her so-called compliance team showed up. 4 of them. 2 teenagers in khakis and bike helmets, an older man wearing what I can only describe as ex-mall cop energy, and a skinny guy who looked like he'd lost a bet. They marched up my path like they were on a SWAT mission. One held a measuring tape, another carried a clipboard. They stopped dead in their tracks when I walked out of the barn, wiping grease off my hands with a rag. Now, I'm not what you'd call a small man. And after 20 years in the army and another 10 on this land, I don't exactly move with HOA welcome committee vibes. I was wearing my usual camo pants, a sleeveless flannel, and a look that said, "I wrestled a coyote before breakfast." But what really froze them wasn't me. It was Clyde. Clyde is a 1,200-pound bison with attitude issues and abandonment trauma. He was standing behind me, chewing lazily on the corner of an old porch cushion and giving the squad a look like, "Try me." The clipboard guy opened his mouth, probably to start reading from some script. But all that came out was, Sir? Good morning? Did you bring donuts?" I asked. He blinked. No, sir." "Then I'd suggest you turn around and go back to wherever you came from." To their credit, they hesitated for almost 2 full seconds before turning as one and power walking back to their hybrid SUV. One of the teens dropped the measuring tape and didn't bother to pick it up. Clyde snorted once, then went back to his cushion. I gave him a piece of apple for his bravery. Later that evening, I built a scarecrow at the edge of my driveway. Gave it a blonde wig, a plastic clipboard, and a sash that said, "Queen of Covenants." For the face, I printed out Karen's photo from the HOA website and laminated it, figured she'd appreciate the touch. The next morning, I woke up to a loud whoosh above the barn. Drone. Sleek, black, hovering like a wasp. I waved. It zipped upward and back toward Bloomfield. I knew then, she was escalating. That's when I poured a second cup of coffee, grabbed my binoculars, and waited on the porch. It didn't take long. Less than an hour later, I saw her, crouched behind a cactus like a deer in headlights, her entire body wrapped in desert camouflage gear that probably cost more than my truck. She had binoculars in one hand, a walkie-talkie in the other, and a hat that read, Commander-in-Chief. I didn't make that up. She bought it. Wore it with pride. I almost choked on my coffee laughing. I didn't go over there. Didn't need to. She saw me watching. She stood up, dusted herself off, and marched back to her Prius, flinging cactus thorns as she went. I waved. She didn't wave back. That evening, she posted a 900-word Facebook update titled, Community Under Siege, My Battle for HOA Sovereignty. She claimed my windmill caused psychological disruption. My goat was aggressive toward birds, and my lawn decorations violated scenic continuity. The goat, by the way, is named Todd. He once chased a turkey into a wedding. It was hilarious. I wasn't worried yet. But I knew Karen wasn't done. People like her don't back down. They escalate. They plot. They reprint the rulebook and add clauses in Comic Sans. So I sat on my porch as the sun dipped low behind Windmill Hill, scratching Clyde behind the ears, watching the dust settle over the dirt road. Somewhere in that glowing haze, I knew Karen was cooking up her next move. And if I knew anything from my military days, it was this. Never underestimate a suburban general with a clipboard. Karen Littleton did not take defeat lightly. After the Great Scarecrow incident, and the failed patrol mission to my ranch, most folks would have backed off. But not Karen. She saw my lack of fear as a challenge, a threat to her manicured empire of hedges and HOA bylaws. While most of Bloomfield Estates worried about recycling days and squirrel infestations, Karen was poring over bylaws like they were battle maps. The woman was obsessed, and if I had any doubt about it, it vanished when I got a certified letter delivered by a guy in a suit who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. It was a freshly printed amendment to the HOA charter, highlighted, underlined, signed in triplicate, and it announced the birth of a brand new clause, the Territorial Aesthetic Integration Initiative, which, in plain English, meant she wanted the HOA to have say over properties within visible distance of HOA boundaries. That would be me. According to her letter, my windmill, barn, fencing, goat-sized cowboy hats, and even my paint colors now needed visual conformity review. I was to appear at a formal hearing at her house on a Thursday with a witness. I didn't go. Instead, I went to see Bev. Beverly Trammell, former public defender turned rural legal wizard, lived in an old RV parked behind a mechanic's shop and ran her law office out of what used to be a snow cone stand. She wore flip-flops, Hawaiian shirts, and was never without her laptop or her pet turtle, Carl. When I walked in and handed her Karen's letter, Bev snorted and said, "Oh, hell no." She read it 3 times, flipped open her laptop, and started digging. 30 minutes later, she grinned the way only lawyers do when they smell blood in the legal water. "Your land," she said, tapping the screen, "was zoned agricultural legacy in 1887. That makes it exempt from any zoning reclassifications unless approved by the county board, which she can't touch. An HOA jurisdiction?" She held up the printed charter, flipped to the back. Clause 9.8a, HOA boundaries may not extend onto agriculturally zoned legacy land. It's buried in the footnotes. Probably thought no one would ever read this far. I grinned. "You think she knows that?" "She doesn't," Bev said, already drafting a letter. "But she's about to." We mailed Karen a framed copy of Clause 9.8a. Bev insisted we include a short note that read, "Respectfully declined. Sincerely, the Sovereign Republic of Jack's Ranch." It was signed by me and, for good measure, stamped with Clyde's hoofprint in mud. I heard from a Bloomfield kid that Karen screamed so loud her cat climbed inside the dishwasher and refused to come out for a full day. But she still wasn't done. No, Karen decided to go rogue. First came the drones. Sleek little flying spies that buzzed over my ranch every morning and again at sunset. I counted 3. One of them followed Todd around for 20 minutes, trying to get a clear shot of his hat. Todd retaliated by climbing a fence and head-butting it midair. He missed, but the message was clear. I filed a report with the county about illegal surveillance. They laughed and told me to start wearing pants in the mornings. Then came the mystery visits. A guy in a polo shirt knocked one afternoon pretending to be from County Utilities. I asked to see his badge. He said he forgot it. I said he could go find it or go home with a limp. He chose home. A woman in yoga pants came the next day offering free soil tests. I said my soil's doing just fine and asked her which yoga studio Karen went to. She ran off without answering. Karen had clearly gone full conspiracy mode. And then came the night she crossed the line. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a strange sound outside, like someone dragging something heavy through gravel. I stepped out with a flashlight and found a freshly planted tree next to my fence. A regulation-approved ash tree, tagged and wrapped in plastic, sitting exactly 47 feet from my mailbox. Next to it was a small sign that read, "A gift from Bloomfield to promote unity in shade." It was signed in loopy cursive, with HOA love, Karen. Clyde was sniffing it suspiciously. Todd was chewing the corner of the sign. I looked around. No sign of a car. Just tire tracks leading back toward the road. I stood there, stunned, for a moment. Then I did what anyone would do. I tied a red bandana around the tree and renamed it Petty Oak. Next morning, I posted a photo online with the caption, "New addition to the ranch, already annoying." The post went viral. Locals loved it. People from the HOA started commenting things like, "Free Petty Oak," and "Down with tree tyranny." Someone made a t-shirt. Meanwhile, Karen was losing her mind. I later learned from Linda, Karen's treasurer and longtime frenemy, that Karen had started holding secret HOA meetings at her house, not in the community hall, and she was rewriting sections of the charter by hand. Linda was getting nervous. She said Karen had used HOA funds to hire a drone consultant and was funneling repair funds into something called Operation Harmony. When I told Bev, she raised an eyebrow. "She's embezzling HOA money to attack your ranch." I smell court. I wasn't ready for court just yet. I was enjoying this too much. But I also knew things were escalating faster than a squirrel on an espresso drip. So I made a plan. I took Clyde and Todd down to the community farmers market on Saturday morning, wearing their respective bandana and hat. Set up a small booth with a sign that read, "Ask me about Clause 9.8a. I handed out laminated copies. I played my banjo. Clyde posed for selfies. People laughed. They listened. More importantly, they started asking questions. By the time Karen showed up, sunglasses, hat, armed with a flyer that read, "Keep our views HOA approved," half the market was chanting, "Yes, sir," every time I tipped my hat. Karen tried to speak. Someone booed. She looked around, suddenly outnumbered in a place she used to rule. She stormed off, red-faced, knocking over a tray of organic zucchini. That night, I got another drone over my house. I didn't wave this time. I got out the garden hose, aimed it like a shotgun, and blasted the thing out of the sky. Clyde mooed in approval. War was officially declared. But I wasn't afraid. I had the law, the land, a lawyer with a turtle, and a goat with excellent aim. Karen thought she could intimidate me with letters and shrubbery. What she didn't understand was that you don't poke the bear when the bear has Wi-Fi, a fanbase, and a bison with unresolved trauma. Let the games begin. Karen's war started to backfire faster than a golf cart with a raccoon in the engine. By the time her Operation Harmony reached full throttle, the neighborhood of Bloomfield Estates had begun to experience something unusual: dissent. For years, Karen ruled with a sequined iron fist, patrolling for uncut grass, enforcing hedge symmetry, and issuing citations for things like whimsical garden gnomes or basketball hoops visible from the street. But something had shifted. Word of her crusade against my ranch had trickled through the community, and not everyone was buying her version of events. Some folks started asking themselves, if Karen's got time to monitor a ranch outside of Bloomfield, why can't she fix the potholes near the clubhouse? It started with flamingos. Bright pink ones? Dozens of them. One morning, the perfectly manicured lawn of house number 42, home of retired dentist and lifelong Karen supporter Gerald Barnes, bloomed with at least 20 plastic flamingos in joyful rebellion. Gerald claimed it was a prank. The rest of the HOA Facebook group claimed it was art. That same afternoon, another house painted their front door vivid tangerine, a color not even close to HOA-approved shades. Karen went apoplectic. Her response? Hand-delivered citations to every offending home and a furious group email titled, "Crisis of Community Standards." But it was too late. The neighborhood revolt had begun. From my end, I watched it unfold like a telenovela. Neighbors started sending me screenshots of Karen's increasingly frantic posts. She began live-streaming her daily patrols on Facebook, narrating each mailbox and shrub like a war correspondent reporting from a combat zone. "Here," she whispered, camera shaking. "We see a rogue lawn decoration shaped like a squirrel. Unauthorized. Unregistered. Unacceptable." Her followers, down from hundreds to just a handful, mostly left popcorn emojis and comments like, "Let the squirrel be free." It was beautiful chaos. Meanwhile, Bev and I kept digging into the HOA's finances, and what we found was better than a country song about cheating lovers and pickup trucks. Karen had been siphoning off HOA funds under vague budget categories like neighborhood aesthetic restoration and bird relocation consulting. One line item simply said, "cloud removal," which to this day, I still don't understand. Turns out she had spent thousands hiring a private drone company, booking catered strategy meetings, and buying personalized merchandise, including a full line of Commander Karen coffee mugs, notebooks, and a velvet banner she hung in her living room that read, "Lead with Lawns." Bev nearly choked on her iced tea when she found the receipt for that one. Then came the accidental leak. During a routine HOA meeting, streamed live for transparency, Karen forgot to mute her mic during a break. While chomping on what sounded like kettle chips, she muttered to someone off-screen, "If I have to bulldoze that damn ranch myself, I will. I don't care if he's got a goat named Todd or a buffalo playing bodyguard." The video went viral before the chips stopped crunching. Neighbors started tagging me. Someone auto-tuned it into a country remix. The chorus was, "I'll bulldoze that damn ranch." And Clyde's picture was the album cover. It got 100,000 views in a week. Even Bev downloaded it. I caught her humming it during our next legal meeting. But it wasn't all laughs. Karen wasn't giving up. One night, floodlights hit the edge of my property around 11 p.m. A black SUV parked near the fence line. Out stepped a man in steel-toe boots, hard hat, and an orange vest. He carried what looked like surveying gear and a clipboard. I walked up calmly, flashlight in hand. "You're on private property," I said. He looked up, startled. I was told this was a pending development site." "Pending what?" He looked at his clipboard. "Perimeter upgrades, possibly a walking trail. HOA improvement project. I got the work order yesterday." I stared at him. "And who gave you that?" He hesitated, then said, "A woman named Karen." "Of course." I told him unless he wanted to meet Clyde and be escorted off the property by 4 hooves and a lot of muscle, he'd better turn his truck around. He did. Fast. The next morning I called Bev. She didn't even need to hear the whole story. "She's trying to initiate a fake construction project on your land," she said. "That's not just overreach. That's criminal trespass. Time to make a move." So I did. We scheduled a public town hall meeting, not in the HOA clubhouse, but at the local rec center. Word got out fast. The invite said, "Jack Monroe versus the HOA, bring questions, snacks, and an open mind." I baked cornbread. Bev brought folders. Clyde came too, wearing a ribbon. People showed up. Not just Bloomfield residents, locals from all over the county, curious about the man behind the windmill war, filed in with folding chairs and curiosity. Karen showed up last. She wore a pantsuit, her signature pearls, and a smile so tight it could have sliced steel. I took the mic and explained everything, how I'd been targeted, surveilled, and harassed despite living outside HOA jurisdiction. Bev pulled up charts and receipts. We even had a video montage someone edited of Karen's Facebook rants, complete with dramatic music and slow zooms. The crowd was stunned. And then came the kicker. Linda stood up. Treasurer of the HOA. Lifelong Karen ally. She cleared her throat and read from a statement. She confessed to signing off on some of Karen's expenses without realizing their true intent. She publicly apologized. Then she said, "It's time we reconsider who represents us." And just like that, a motion was made to hold an emergency vote for HOA leadership. Karen's face went through 7 different shades of beige. But the vote wasn't immediate. It would happen the next day. Karen stormed out, pearl necklace jangling like angry wind chimes. The door didn't quite slam, but it tried. Back at the ranch that night, I sat by the fire pit with Clyde and Todd, watching the stars. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring. Maybe justice. Maybe more drones. Maybe both. But what I knew for sure was that the people had spoken, and somewhere deep down, even Karen had to realize that her empire was crumbling faster than a cookie in a bison's mouth. The next day was Judgment Day. And win or lose, I'd be there. Flannel pressed. Hat on straight. Goat at my side. The morning of the HOA impeachment vote arrived with the same buzz as a county fair. Birds sang like they knew something was about to change, and even the sky seemed unusually clear, like it wanted a better view of the chaos brewing below. I woke up early, fed Clyde and Todd, brewed a pot of strong coffee, and walked the fence line just to feel grounded. The windmill spun gently in the breeze, whistling like it was rooting for me. Today wasn't just about stopping Karen. It was about setting things right, not just for me but for every person she'd made miserable with her power-tripping clipboard and fluorescent yard signs. By 9 a.m., the Bloomfield Community Clubhouse was packed. Cars lined the streets, neighbors huddled in little gossip knots on the sidewalk, and the HOA board sat nervously in their usual chairs. Karen, in her usual cream pantsuit and fresh curls, wore a smile so brittle it might have cracked under a sneeze. Her husband, who rarely made appearances, stood in the back looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. On the wall behind the podium, her velvet "Lead with Lawns" banner hung a little crooked, like it knew what was coming and couldn't quite hold its own dignity. Linda called the meeting to order. She cleared her throat, glanced once at Karen, then spoke firmly into the mic. Today's emergency session is to determine whether President Karen Littleton has acted in violation of the HOA charter, misused HOA funds, and breached the trust of the community she represents. You could hear a pin drop. Even the snack table was untouched. I sat near the back with Bev and a folder full of receipts, legal findings, and drone footage stills. Todd was waiting outside in a little playpen someone brought just for him. Clyde was in the trailer with a fan and a giant bale of hay, watching everything through the open door. Karen, of course, asked to speak first. She launched into a passionate speech about community standards, the importance of visual harmony, and how her courageous leadership had brought order and unity to Bloomfield Estates. She called my ranch an eyesore, a threat, and a catalyst for suburban decay. She accused the crowd of being manipulated by rural sensationalism. And at one point she compared me to a rogue revolutionary, hiding behind a goat and a bison. Someone coughed suspiciously loud during that part, and a muffled chuckle rolled through the room. Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly, walked to the mic, and tipped my hat. "Good morning," I said. "I'm not part of your HOA. Never wanted to be. Never asked to be. But I've been dragged into this because one person decided my ranch offended her sense of symmetry." I showed the group the evidence Bev had prepared. The illegal surveillance. The fake construction permits. The misuse of funds for personal merchandise. Every page I turned seemed to chip away at the myth of Karen. Her supporters looked more and more uncomfortable, and even her closest allies started folding their arms and glancing sideways. Then came the final blow. A slideshow Bev had titled, Karen Unfiltered, featuring screenshots from her live streams, group chats, and of course, the now famous unmuted mic meltdown. When her voice filled the room saying, I'll bulldoze that damn ranch if it's the last thing I do. You could feel the tide shift completely. People shook their heads, muttered to each other. Someone actually whispered, We're paying dues for this? Linda stood again, this time with trembling hands and wet eyes. We trusted you, Karen, she said quietly. You used our community as your personal kingdom. You made people afraid to plant flowers that didn't match your palette. That's not leadership. That's control. And then, just like that, a motion was made. A vote was taken. Paper ballots, handed out and collected in silence. It took 15 minutes to count them, but it felt like hours. Karen stared straight ahead, unmoving, like if she blinked, she might shatter. When Linda returned to the podium, she didn't draw it out. By a vote of 36-4, Karen Littleton is hereby removed as president of the Bloomfield Estates Homeowners Association. It was over. No applause. No shouting. Just stunned silence and one very long exhale from somewhere near the back. Karen stood up slowly, smoothed her jacket, and for a moment, I thought she might go out with dignity. But then she grabbed the mic and hissed, You'll regret this. All of you. And then she stormed out, nearly knocking over the banner that had once declared her queen. I stepped outside into the sunlight, breathed in deep, and smiled. People followed me out. Some clapped me on the back, others just nodded. A few even apologized for not speaking up sooner. Linda joined me by the trailer, and said she'd make sure the HOA charter would be reviewed by an actual legal team from now on. Bev, grinning ear to ear, handed me a donut and said, Justice is best served with sprinkles. That evening, I hosted a little gathering at the ranch. Word had gotten out, and it turned into a full-blown block party. Someone brought a smoker, someone else a cooler full of sodas, and by sunset, there were more than 40 people on my land, kids riding hay bales, adults dancing near the fire pit, and Clyde posing for selfies like a seasoned celebrity. Todd had his own booth labeled, Meet the Goat, and someone gave him a tiny sheriff badge. I played the banjo for a while, then let the teens take over with a Bluetooth speaker and a playlist that somehow included both Johnny Cash and electronic polka. It was perfect. For the first time, my ranch wasn't just a place of solitude. It was a bridge between two worlds that had spent too long staring suspiciously at each other across fences and Facebook feeds. Turns out, a little chaos can lead to a lot of clarity. Weeks passed. The flamingos stayed. HOA's citations stopped. Linda took over as interim president and actually listened when people brought concerns. The drone ban was made official, and my windmill was given the unofficial title of Historic Landmark by the kids who started taking field trips to see it. I even let Kyle, Karen's nephew from the original patrol, come work at the ranch on weekends. He turned out to be a good kid with a knack for fixing fences and a surprising love for goat yoga. As for Karen, last I heard, she'd moved to a minimalist tiny home community in Utah, where she ran a podcast called Covenants and Control. She still wore pearls on camera. Her HOA badge now served as a coaster, and according to Linda, she hasn't been invited back to a single Bloomfield meeting since. I still sit on my porch most mornings, coffee in hand, watching the windmill spin while Clyde grazes and Todd plots his next escape attempt. Peace has returned, not just to my ranch, but to the neighborhood. And sometimes, when the breeze is just right, I swear I can still hear it, the faint, distant sound of a clipboard snapping in frustration.